Okay, so welcome to the final briefing of the Integrative Capstone Workshop in Sustainability Management. My name is George Sarah-Nicolau. I coordinate the workshop and I am a manager at the Earth Institute. The capstone is my favorite course in the program, and that's because students get to practice what they've learned. In this course, students work on a pro bono basis for a client on a real-world project. The clients range from city, state, federal agencies to non-governmental organizations, both here in the United States but also abroad. And the problems that our students are asked to solve have to do with every aspect of sustainability, from waste management to climate change, to conservation. And this semester, we've expanded the spectrum by broaching the field of Cleantech. Now, most of you who are in the program know that sustainability problems are inherently multifaceted and complex. And so working on these projects means that students have to draw on a wide array of knowledge, from management to science, sometimes engineering, policy. And so in that way, the capstone helps students synthesize everything that they've learned in the program. These projects, though, ask students to do two other very important things, and that's work in teams. And if you notice on the bottom of this slide, this was a particularly large team, and so with that comes challenges. Okay, the others will tell you what it really comes to, but the second thing that working on these projects does is challenge the students to come here and tell you a persuasive, engaging story about their work. So we're gathered here tonight to hear one of these stories. Now, before we begin, let me just cover a couple of logistical points. The presentation will be 10 minutes. Afterwards, there will be time for questions, and I encourage all of you to think of good questions. We will continue the reception that we began at the beginning of the program after the presentation is over. We are recording the session tonight, so please silence your cell phones. And if you do ask a question, or in your case, Kent, if you're presenting, please speak into the mic so that we can capture it on tape. So with that, I'd like to ask Kent to start us off.
Hello and welcome to Optimizing a Cleantech Innovation Program prepared for the Climate Group. This was a very exciting project to work on. So exciting, in fact, that we had 16 members sign up at the beginning of the semester, a much larger group than usual. Just to give you a very high-level overview of the program that we're going to be working on, the Climate Group came to us with a program that helps to integrate low-carbon technologies into large firms, and they've seen their membership base decline over the last couple of years, and they've come to us to ask how we can optimize this program and get their membership base back. So today I'll be giving you an overview of who the Climate Group is, background of the project, the methodology that we used, and ultimately finishing with our recommendations. So who is the Climate Group? The Climate Group is a nonprofit organization working worldwide with businesses and governments to help promote low-carbon practices. They're a pioneer within this space and have been involved for about 10 years now. Some of the work that they do is in thought leadership, so generating reports, networking events. One of the biggest events run around the world, Climate Week NYC, is ran by the Climate Group. I'm sure many of you have heard of it. It's actually running in just a couple weeks here in New York. And they also do a number of pilot programs, one of their largest being a program run with Philips, helping to implement LED lighting in a number of cities worldwide. The Climate Group is a very large network with 4 offices worldwide in New York City, London, Beijing, and New Delhi. They have approximately 29 corporate members. Some of these members are very large, such as Nike, Johnson Controls, IKEA. And they have approximately a 23-person public officials network with some very prestigious names, such as Richard Branson and Tony Blair. Because the Climate Group has a lot of experience in this area, they understand that they need to focus to really make a strong impact to help mitigate climate change. And because of this, they've developed the Clean Revolution. This was a program developed in 2011, and it puts priority on integrating low-carbon disruptive technologies into big businesses. Our project's objective is to recommend services the Climate Group can provide to facilitate the adoption of low-carbon disruptive technologies and ways to financially support these services. Our scope is limited to the stakeholders of businesses, clean tech startups, and venture capitalists. The reason we are looking at clean tech startups and venture capitalists is because of how integral they are to implementing these technologies into large businesses. The geographies we've limited ourselves to is the US and the UK, excluding the China and India office. The methodology we used was a 2-step approach, starting with a needs assessment. We interviewed 18 organizations, some of them being members, some of them being non-members. With these interviews, we tried to gather the key needs of these organizations, as well as their willingness to pay for different services. In regards to the best practices analysis, we thoroughly looked at 11 nonprofit and for-profit organizations, looking to benchmark various services they offer, as well as reviewing the funding models that they use. From here, we developed our recommendations and our proposed services to offer and a funding model that could be implemented. During the course of our project, we found some very interesting key findings, with our biggest being companies are expecting the Climate Group to bring more value into its service offerings. The Climate Group is in a very competitive environment. In fact, there's so many organizations in this environment, so many organizations that have entered this environment over the last couple of years that the Climate Group is starting to see some issues. There are more than 850 NGOs worldwide working to mitigate climate change, and over 15 clean tech incubators within the US alone. When we talked with a number of these big business interviewees, 5 of the 9 said they're working with 3 or more similar organizations to the Climate Group. Because of this, there's clearly a lot of overlapping services, primarily in regards to the reports that are issued, as well as the networking opportunities that are present. So, the Climate Group's value proposition has decreased in the last couple of years. With this being said, some of their services are still appreciated, primarily in regards to convening experts into one area, as well as some of the research they've done in the past has been highly appreciated. But companies are starting to question the quid pro quo in regards to the membership fees. There's been a perceived shift of the Climate Group's focus from big business to the public sector. There's a bit of need in regards to additional substance of the reports and networking opportunities, and communication can be improved in regards to frequency and content. So with all this being said, the Climate Group's membership base is at risk. Only one organization we interviewed was highly satisfied with the Climate Group services. Almost 2/3 of the companies that we interviewed rated their satisfaction as average, and a lot of these organizations are currently reevaluating their membership to see if they're going to stay on next year. So because of that, we see that there's a need to reinject value into the service offerings of the Climate Group. To really understand where the Climate Group can best add value, we had to understand where the needs lied for these different organizations. So we developed a 5-step framework to understand how technologies are integrated into these big businesses. The first step is to convince. So we all know that sustainability is a hot topic in today's business realm. And we need to understand that it needs to shift from just trying to mitigate your carbon footprint to really prioritizing the implementation of these low carbon disruptive technologies and changing the current business model. There are plenty of technologies out there. So the screening stage is a stage where they begin to eliminate the technologies that are relevant to their firm and narrowing it down to one or two that they'd like to implement. And from here, we move into the third and one of the most critical stages of evaluation. This is the step where the company is going to build the business case, and most of us know without a business case, no project is going to get approved. A lot of the sustainability projects actually get hung up on this stage because of the profitability aspect. From here, a company would move into the fourth stage, the implementation stage, where they have a pilot project of the technology, testing it on a small scale. Then they'll tweak the technology a little bit and implement it on a larger scale and do a full rollout. So we then took this framework and tried to assess where the climate group can best add value. And that's to focus on the first three steps. Both through our research as well as the different interviews that we performed, it was clear that the climate group is not viewed as a technical or project management expert. So after deciding to focus on these first three steps, now we began to look at the needs and the expectations of these organizations within these steps. Within the first step, the companies really have a need to help convince internal management and the stakeholders, and the expectation to help do this is through original research. Within the second stage, they'd like some help vetting the best available technologies. They'd like this to be done through matchmaking services. Now, I'd just like to note that in this step, this is actually a segmented need. About half of the firms would like this, and the other half currently do this in-house and are very content with their own group. Finally, within the third stage, there's a need to help improve the financial profitability of these various technologies, and their expectation is to help do this through public policy advocacy. So moving on to our service-specific recommendations, we have two areas, research and information and networking. And within each of these, we have high, medium, and low priority. High priority being recommendations we believe should be implemented almost immediately. Medium being recommendations that should be implemented as resources are available. And finally, low priority are recommendations more surrounding other considerations, and if they can get to them, that'd be great. So I'm only going to talk about one of them here, launching a public policy task force with corporations. We talked with a lot of sustainability officers through the course of our interviews, and it became clear that they don't know how to interact with the public sector currently. So with this task force, we would like to provide education on how to interact with the public sector by bringing in public policy experts from the Climate Group's network. And we'd also like to consolidate all of these companies' lobbying efforts, as we believe that would be the best way to utilize the resources. This is currently a service that is in high demand from these various corporations, and it will fill one of the critical needs. It'll provide a lot of value to these organizations, and none of the competition is currently providing a service similar to this. Moving to our funding recommendations, again, we've utilized a high, medium, and low priority. Again, I'm going to only talk about one just due to time constraints. We would like to see the Climate Group pursue additional philanthropic funding. The Climate Group does pursue philanthropic funding currently. However, it's been reduced over the last couple of years, and we'd like to see that increase. The reason for this is it allows for the greatest flexibility in regards to the allocation of the capital, and it also is the best way to diversify their funding portfolio. Because we believe some of these members may fall off over the next year or two, we believe that philanthropic funding can help support them. So just to wrap everything up, it's clear that low-carbon disruptive technologies are critical in addressing climate change. Competition has increased greatly within this sector, and the Climate Group's membership base is at risk. So ultimately, we recommend that they focus on the first three stages of the framework, they refine their service offerings to the ones previously discussed, and they implement a renewed funding model. I'd like to thank everyone for listening, and I'd also like to thank our team for all the hard work they've done over the course of this semester, and I'd like to open the floor to any questions.
Excuse me. In the beginning, you had said they were losing people who were getting involved, members or sponsors. But what was the reason for that? What was the direct reason? What was these companies leaving Cleantech?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I completely understand the question.
You originally said when you started that this group was
Yep.
losing clients, business. But what was the main driver? Why were they leaving?
So they saw a lack of value because these new competitors were coming into the industry. They were offering services typically either free or at a better rate, so to speak. As well, the Climate Group wasn't adapting their services to what these companies wanted. That's the biggest reason why they're losing a majority of their members.
Just one other question. And so what is their main forte? What is their main strength?
Their main strength would be research and developing reports, as well as developing the networking events such as Climate Week NYC.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Kent. Very nice presentation. As you mentioned, there are a number of other organizations that are getting into the field, and it sort of begs the question, as you see so many groups in so many areas of the sustainability consulting arena and sustainability support services, was there any consideration to creating some sort of a merger with other organizations that are providing similar services to augment and to build that base up?
That is something that we did not consider. It seemed from the client's perspective that was not something they were interested in at all. They were very focused in trying to further develop this program, the Clean Revolution, that they started in 2011. And so we never even considered that. We also, just from the knowledge that we gained, it wouldn't seem like some of these other organizations would be interested in merging because they are starting to take some of this market share from the Climate Group. I don't know if there'd be a lot of value. The only value would probably be the current branding that the Climate Group would bring.
Thank you.
So Kent, one of your top recommendations was this public task force. What will it take for the Climate Group to implement that recommendation? Do they have the money for it?
So money is actually not one of the critical needs of implementing the public policy task force, which is one of the reasons why it is a high priority recommendation. The primary things that they need to implement the public policy task force would be to gather all of their current members. They would have to allocate staff to run this public policy task force. And it would actually be really helpful for the Climate Group because a lot of the work is going to be done by the member corporations rather than themselves. So they're going to be providing value while also doing minimal work, so to speak, in comparison to some of our other recommendations.
Okay, nice job, Kent. Before I invite you to partake of our refreshments and speak with one another, I'd just like to recognize the faculty advisor, Kizzy Charles Guzman, who worked with these students all summer long on this project. So a hand for Kizzy. Those of you who are students in the program, but who have yet to reach the stage where you are to take capstone, I'd just like to tell you that this is what you have to look forward to. We, as advisors, look forward to working with you on those projects. Those of you who are brand new, who have yet to begin, welcome to Columbia. We look forward to working with you in these classes, including the capstone come September. So thank you all for coming, and great work to the team.